Get your hands on the wheel where I can see them. I need your license and registration immediately.
The body camera timestamp reads 23 hours, 12 minutes, and 2 seconds. April 20th. In exactly 9 minutes, a 20-year law enforcement career will be over. Not because of a shootout, not because of a scandal, but because of one man's bad feeling about a car. Most people who see a $200,000 Mercedes MayBach see a symbol of everything they're working toward. Officer Garrett Vance saw something different. In his world, shaped by a decade of street stops and a bad week of luxury vehicle thefts, there was no legitimate reason for a black man in a tailored suit to be behind that wheel. Not at 11 p.m. Not on this road. He was wrong. He was catastrophically wrong. And somewhere in that spotless interior, Elias Sterling already knew how this night was going to end. This is the story of how a 3-minute traffic stop became a $5 million liability for the city, a landmark civil rights settlement, and the last hour of Garrett Vance's career in law enforcement. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, let me know in the comment where you are watching from tonight. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, because what unfolds over the next several minutes will leave you speechless. Trust me, you wouldn't want to miss it. The city moves differently at 11 p.m. The daytime version, all gridlock and construction noise, and suits walking fast with somewhere important to be, gives way to something leaner, more selective. The roads belong to the people who own the night, the club crowd, the late shift workers, the ones whose business doesn't require sunlight. And threading through all of it, silent as a thought, a black Mercedes MayBach as 580 glides down Meridian Avenue, like it was built specifically for this hour. Inside, Elias Sterling exists in a different atmosphere entirely. The cabin is climate-controlled to 68 degrees. Soft amber light pools along the door panels, warm enough to read by, dim enough to think in. On the rear passenger display, because Elias always has a driver when the event runs past 10, except tonight. Tonight he wanted the wheel, wanted 30 minutes of road between the office and the noise of the gala. A schedule is cued. Midnight arrival. Remarks at 12:20. The keynote runs 8 minutes. He has given it 4 times already. He could deliver it from inside a blackout. He is wearing a suit that costs more than Garrett Vance's monthly take-home. He is not wearing it to impress anyone. He is wearing it because he was raised by a woman who believed the world treated you the way you dressed for it. And in 41 years, Elias has not found sufficient evidence to prove her wrong. The leather beneath him is hand-stitched. The wood trim is genuine walnut burl. The tires make almost no sound on the asphalt. The MayBach is engineered to isolate you from the world outside, to surround you in a kind of rolling silence that money spent a long time learning how to manufacture. There's a crystal tumbler of still water in the cup holder. Elias has not touched it. He is thinking about the keynote. He is thinking about the new community broadband initiative his foundation is presenting next week. He is thinking about whether he remembered to reply to Marcus about the lab funding renewal. He is not thinking about what is behind him until the blue lights ignite his rearview mirror. Garrett Vance has been on the job for 19 years, and in 19 years he has developed what he privately calls instincts, and what the department would, under sworn testimony, be forced to call something else entirely. He runs the plate in his head before he runs it in the system. Not procedure. Habit. His eyes move over the MayBach's trunk line, the tinted glass, the shine of it under the sodium streetlights, and something in him calculates. High-end vehicle. Late hour. He has been hearing about a professional car theft ring working the North Corridor for 3 weeks. The briefings have made him trigger-ready. The briefings have made him, in ways he has not examined and will never examine, certain. He does not activate his lights because Elias has committed a traffic infraction. He activates them because he has decided something, and now he needs a reason to match the decision. By the time the MayBach is stopped and Vance has covered the distance from his cruiser to the driver's side window, something has already tightened in him. Not anger exactly, but its structural cousin. The coiled readiness of a man who has already scripted the confrontation before it begins. He raps his knuckles on the glass. Once. Hard. The window descends without hurry. License, registration, and proof of insurance, Vance says. He does not say good evening. He does not say sir. Elias looks at him with the unhurried patience of a man who has weathered rooms far more hostile than this. He reaches for the center console, slowly, because he knows better than to move quickly, and produces a leather document wallet. Everything is inside. Registration in his name, proof of insurance current to the end of the year, his driver's license with the address of the 16,000 square foot house he owns 11 minutes from where they are currently sitting. Vance takes the documents. His eyes move across the license, then to the registration, then back to the license. Something shifts in his expression. Not recalibration, not concession, but a kind of doubling down that a man performs when the facts in front of him refuse to cooperate with what he has already decided is true. This your vehicle? It is. Vance looks at the interior. He looks at Elias. He looks at the registration again, as if a second reading might produce a different owner's name. Where are you coming from tonight? My office. Where are you headed? The Hargrove Gala. Downtown. A pause. Vance's jaw works slightly, like he is chewing on something that won't go down. 19 years of certainty do not dissolve, because a man in a good suit produces clean paperwork. If anything, the cleanliness of the paperwork makes Vance more suspicious, the way some people are made more suspicious by anything that looks too prepared, too composed, too far outside the story they've already written. Step out of the vehicle, sir. The word sir lands like an afterthought, like something appended at the last moment to technically comply with a policy he has already decided does not apply here. Elias Sterling does not move. He does not argue. He looks at Garrett Vance with the precise stillness of a man who has just decided to let this play out all the way to the end. He reaches for his phone and opens the camera. There is a particular kind of rage that lives just beneath the surface of men like Garrett Vance. Men who have spent 2 decades being obeyed, for whom compliance is not a courtesy, but a confirmation of their own authority. It does not announce itself. It does not build gradually. It detonates the moment the world fails to organize itself the way they have decided it should. Elias Sterling holding a phone camera is, to Garrett Vance, a declaration of war. Put the phone down. The words come out flat. Controlled, but only barely, the way a lid is controlled when something underneath it is already at full boil. Elias does not put the phone down. He adjusts the angle slightly, ensuring the frame includes the badge number on Vance's chest. He does this without a word, without breaking eye contact, without any of the visible anxiety that Vance has come to read as the natural response to his presence. The camera's red recording light pulses in the dark of the cabin like a small, steady heartbeat. Vance leans in, and this is the image that the Axon body camera captures, that the dash cam captures, that 3 separate phones across the street capture simultaneously. A police officer, broad-shouldered and rigid with barely managed fury, braced against the door frame of a vehicle he has no legal grounds to have stopped, his face close enough to the window that his breath fogs the lingering edge of the glass. And in the seat, perfectly still, perfectly composed, a man in a navy suit watching him the way a chess player watches an opponent make the move that ends the game. I said put the phone down. That is a lawful order. Recording a police interaction is constitutionally protected. Elias's voice is even, not provocative, not loud. The tone of a man stating a fact he learned long ago and has had occasion to cite before. Something behind Vance's eyes crosses a threshold. He straightens up, pulls his radio from his shoulder. This is Vance on Meridian. I have an uncooperative suspect, requesting backup at my location. He clips the radio back before dispatch can ask clarifying questions. He does not want clarifying questions. Clarifying questions require him to explain what the suspect has actually done, and what the suspect has actually done is sit quietly in his own car, hold a camera, and decline to perform the fear that Vance has decided he is owed. Uncooperative. It is a word that carries a lot of freight in a police report. It is a word that transforms a man sitting still into a threat. It is a word Vance has used before, whenever composure got mistaken for defiance, whenever someone failed to disintegrate on command. Step out of the vehicle. I will not ask again. Am I being detained? Step out. The volume lands like a physical thing. Somewhere across the street, a phone camera tilts upward, catching the audio. Vance's palm comes down on the doorframe. Not a strike, but something adjacent to one, the heel of his hand connecting with the metal with enough force to make the point he cannot quite bring himself to articulate. His face is inches from Elias's now, jaw set, eyes hard and bright, with the particular indignation of a man who has just been refused something he has never been refused before. And Elias Sterling looks back at him. That is all he does. He looks back at him with an expression that contains no fear, no anger, no performance of submission, no performance of anything. It is the most unsettling thing Vance has encountered in 19 years on the job, because he does not have a category for it. He knows belligerence. He can meet belligerence. It gives him justification. It gives him a script. He knows panic. He knows pleading. He has seen all the variations of a man trying to make himself smaller. He does not know this. He does not know how to process a man who is simply, completely, immovably at peace, which means he processes it as a threat. In the architecture of Vance's thinking, calm is a weapon. Silence is aggression. The refusal to react is resistance, and resistance must be overcome. He reaches for the door handle. The MayBach's door opens with the soft, expensive click of precision German engineering, the kind of sound that belongs in a showroom, and the night air rushes into the cabin, carrying the distant sound of traffic, the ambient glow of the city, and the noise of people across the street who have stopped walking and started filming. Elias steps out without being touched. He does this deliberately, because being touched is a different chapter, and he intends to control which chapters get written tonight. He is taller than Vance expects. He stands straight, phone still recording, and when Vance instructs him to place his hands on the hood, Elias complies in one smooth, unhurried motion that makes the order look like a suggestion he has graciously decided to accommodate. Vance talks. He fills the air with procedure and assertion and the scaffolding of authority, louder than the situation requires, louder than the street requires, loud in the way that men get loud when they're trying to convince themselves as much as anyone else. Elias says nothing. He watches the recording timer climb. 23 hours, 14 minutes, and 9 seconds. 23 hours, 14 minutes, and 22 seconds. 23 hours, 14 minutes, and 47 seconds. Somewhere 2 blocks north, Sergeant Marcus Thorne hears the backup call and pulls out of a gas station. He is not rushing. Not yet. He does not yet know that he needs to. Sergeant Marcus Thorne has responded to backup calls for 14 years. And in 14 years, he has developed a reliable sense of what he is driving toward. The radio gives you almost nothing. A name, a location, a loaded word like uncooperative, but the texture of the call tells you more. The pace of the officer's breathing, the decibel level, whether dispatch sounds bored, or whether there is something clipped and careful in the way they relay the address. Thorne has learned to read all of it, the way sailors read weather and the quality of the wind before the clouds arrive. This call reads routine. Vance is excitable by nature, always has been. The kind of officer who finds confrontation where steadier men find conversation. Thorne has written 2 informal notes to his file in the past 3 years. Nothing that went anywhere. Nothing that ever does. He pulls on a Meridian with one hand on the wheel, expecting a raised voice, maybe a man sitting on a curb, maybe paperwork that needs straightening out. He does not expect what he finds. The MayBach registers first. Even from 40 yards out, even under sodium streetlights, the car announces itself. The length of it, the black-on-black depth of the paint, the understated hood ornament catching the light like a period at the end of a very long sentence about money. Thorne slows instinctively, not because luxury vehicles make him nervous, but because something in the composition of what he is looking at does not assemble correctly. The car is too still. The scene around it is too loud. There is a man in a suit standing at the hood with his hands pressed to the metal, and there is Vance behind him, words coming out in that particular staccato rhythm that means he has already decided how this ends and is now performing the paperwork of his decision. Thorne parks, kills the engine, sits for 1 full second longer than necessary. Then he runs the plate. The result comes back in 11 seconds. He reads it twice. Then he reads the registered owner's name a 3rd time, slowly, the way you read something when you're hoping the words will rearrange themselves into something less catastrophic. They do not rearrange. He gets out of the car. The walk from his cruiser to the scene covers maybe 30 feet and takes approximately 8 seconds. And in those 8 seconds, Thorne's mind does something that minds do in moments of arriving disaster. It moves very fast through a cascade of implications, each one worse than the last. It lands on an image, a ribbon-cutting ceremony, 14 months ago, the new forensic wing of the precinct's evidence lab. White tarp pulled away. Applause. The police chief, smiling for a photograph. And next to the chief, hand extended, The man who had written the check that made the whole thing possible. Elias Sterling. Sterling Foundation. $1.2 million. Thorne had shaken that hand. Had said, "Sincerely, we are grateful, sir." Had meant it. That man is currently handcuffed against the hood of his own car on Meridian Avenue. Thorne stops 2 feet for Vance. He does not look at Vance yet. He looks at Elias, at the set of his shoulders, at the phone still recording in his hand, at the expression on his face, which is not the expression of a man who is frightened or broken or grateful for the cavalry's arrival. It is the expression of a man who has been waiting patiently and with absolute certainty for exactly this moment. "Mr. Sterling." Thorne's voice comes out quieter than he intends. The words carry the involuntary weight of recognition, of context flooding in all at once. Elias turns his head. He looks at Thorne with those same level eyes. "Sergeant." One word, delivered without heat, without relief, without any of the emotional performance that the situation might excuse. Just a title, returned cleanly, like a document signed and handed back. Thorne turns to Vance, and what passes across his face in that moment is not anger. Not yet. It is something more interior than anger, something that resembles the particular misery of a man watching an avalanche that he cannot stop, and that is going to take out everything at the bottom of the mountain, including things that had nothing to do with the conditions that caused it. He looks at his officer. He looks at the handcuffs. He looks at the crowd across the street, the phone still raised, the little red lights blinking in the dark like a constellation of permanent records. He speaks quietly, quietly enough that the street doesn't fully catch it, though the body cameras do, and the body cameras are the only audience that matters now. "Vance, do you know who this is?" Vance's posture is still carrying the architecture of authority. Chest forward, chin level, the physical grammar of a man who has not yet accepted that the scene has changed. "Sir," the suspect was being uncooper. "Do you know who this is?" It is not a question the second time. It is a sentence with a floor under it, and Vance can hear the floor. A beat. Something flickers behind Vance's eyes. The first shadow of it. He provided ID. "I ran the..." Elias Sterling. Thorne says the name the way you say the name of something irreversible. He sits on the mayor's public safety advisory board. He funded the forensic lab in our building, the wing with the plaque on the wall. He pauses. You've walked past that plaque every day for 14 months. The silence that follows is a specific kind of silence. It is the silence of a man standing at the exact edge of understanding how badly he has miscalculated, looking down, not yet having accepted the distance of the fall. Vance's mouth opens. Nothing useful comes out. Thorne reaches over and removes the handcuffs himself. He does it without ceremony, without the softening language of apology, because he understands instinctively that softening language is not what this moment calls for, and that no arrangement of words he produces right now will constitute adequate acknowledgement of what has just occurred on this street. Elias straightens his jacket. He rolls one cuff, then the other, smoothing the fabric back into place with the unhurried precision of a man who has all the time in the world, because he does, because from this moment forward, time is the one thing working entirely in his favor. He looks at Vance one final time, not with triumph, not with rage, with something quieter and more permanent than either. Then he looks at Thorne. "I'll need a copy of the body camera footage, Sergeant. My counsel will be in touch before morning." He walks back to the MayBach, gets in, closes the door with that same soft, expensive click. Thorne stands on the shoulder of Meridian Avenue and watches the taillights pull away, and then he turns back to Garrett Vance, who is still standing exactly where he was, holding the handcuffs in one hand, looking like a man watching the horizon swallow the last ship out. "You need to call your union rep," Thorne says quietly. "Right now, before you write a single word of that report." Julian Reeves drives a car that costs a third of what Elias Sterling's costs, and he drives it like a man who has somewhere to be and has already accounted for every traffic light between here and there. He is 44 years old, Yale Law, 17 years at Sterling Legal Trust, and he has never once in those 17 years failed to arrive before the situation required him to. He pulls up behind Thorne's cruiser at 23:31, 19 minutes after the backup call, 11 minutes after Elias's phone connected to his, and he steps out carrying a slim leather briefcase and the specific energy of a man who is not angry so much as he is already 3 moves ahead of everyone else on the board. He does not go to Elias first. He goes to the body cameras. He identifies every officer on the scene, notes every badge number in a small leather notebook, photographs the positioning of every vehicle, and asks Sergeant Thorne, with the pleasant and completely unambiguous tone of a man who knows the answer before he asks the question, whether the Axon footage has been backed up to the cloud server yet. Thorne says yes. Julian nods, makes a note, and smiles the smile of a man who has just confirmed that the evidence is already beyond anyone's ability to misplace. Then he walks to the MayBach, taps twice on the glass, and gets in the back seat. What passes between them in the next 4 minutes, no camera captures. What is known is that when Julian steps back out, his expression has not changed. It was always composed, it remains composed. But there is something more settled in it now. The look of a man whose next several weeks have just been clearly and completely mapped. He makes 3 phone calls standing on the shoulder of Meridian Avenue, none of them lasting longer than 90 seconds, each of them placed with the deliberate sequencing of a man who understands that the order in which you tell people things shapes the story those people carry forward. The first call is to a partner at the city's most prominent civil rights litigation firm. The second is to a journalist at the Metro desk of a paper whose readership includes the mayor, the police chief, and every member of the city council. The third is to a number that is not in his contacts list because it does not need to be. Elias has had the police chief's personal cell since a fundraiser 18 months ago, and Julian uses it now not to threaten, not to negotiate, but simply to inform. To deliver the facts in the same tone you might use to read a weather report. There was an unlawful stop. There were handcuffs. There is footage. There will be a press inquiry by morning. He does not wait for a response. He ends the call and gets back in his car. The police chief calls back 11 minutes later. Julian lets it ring twice before answering. By midnight, the chief has made 4 calls of his own, to the deputy commissioner, to the city's legal counsel, to his own communications director, and finally, reluctantly, to the mayor's overnight aide, a call that nobody in that building is happy to receive at that hour, and that sets in motion a particular kind of institutional panic that moves fast and leaves nothing undisturbed in its path. The gala that Elias was meant to attend proceeds without him. He does not go. He sits in the study of his house with a glass of bourbon and a yellow legal pad and writes, in his own hand, a 3-page letter to the chair of the city's Civilian Oversight Board. He has served on that board's advisory committee for 2 years. He knows the chair's priorities. He knows which pressure points matter and which ones the institution has learned to absorb without changing. He does not write about Officer Vance. He writes about the Stop and Frisk Enhancement Task Force, the unit Vance had volunteered for 18 months ago, and which had, in that time, filed 94% of its pedestrian and traffic stops against Black and Latino residents. He attaches, from memory, references to 7 prior civilian complaints against Vance specifically, all of which have been processed through internal review and returned without meaningful action. He writes without heat and without rhetoric, in the flat and precise language of a man who has learned that outrage is a fire that burns fast and leaves little structure standing, while documentation is a foundation that lasts. In the morning, the letter is hand-delivered. By afternoon, it has been read by 4 people whose signatures are required to convene an emergency review. By Thursday, those 4 signatures exist. The task force disbandment is announced in a press release that uses the language of departmental restructuring and resource reallocation and says nothing about a MayBach on Meridian Avenue, because institutional language is specifically engineered to travel without its origin story. But everyone who reads it knows. Every officer in the precinct knows. The story moves through the building the way all consequential stories move. Not through official channels, but through the silences between sentences, the looks exchanged across the bullpen, the particular quality of the quiet that settles over a place when something irreversible has just occurred. Garrett Vance's badge is suspended pending investigation on the same afternoon the task force announcement goes out. The union rep he called on Thorne's instruction shows up, reviews the footage, reviews the complaint's history, reviews the name of the complainant and the breadth of his documented influence, and delivers an assessment that is honest in the way that assessments only become when the math has already been run and the outcome is not in question. Vance listens. He does not say much. There is not much left to say. The investigation is opened on a Wednesday. It runs 11 days. The badge does not come back. And in the Sterling Foundation's accounting system, quietly and without announcement, a $3.4 million pledge to the police union's annual pension fund is reclassified. The line item is removed. In its place, a new entry appears, same amount, different recipient. The Marcus Reeves Civil Rights Oversight Initiative, an organization that has spent the past 6 years doing the work that internal review boards were designed to do and have, in city after city, consistently failed to. Nobody issues a press release about the redirect. Nobody needs to. In the language that actually governs cities, the language of money, of access, of whose phone calls get returned on the first ring, the message is already perfectly clear.